Ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the May 3rd Policy and Priority meeting. And sorry for the technical problems earlier on. I'd like to welcome everybody. And first off, I guess what we'll do is a call to order and asking if there are any added items. Seeing no hands, I would take a motion for adoption of the agenda, please. Councillor Blatz.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Bennett. I move that we accept the Policies and Priorities Committee regular agenda for Monday, May 3rd, 2021 as presented.
Perfect, thank you. All in favor, please. And that's unanimous and carried. Thank you very much. Next up, we'll have adoption of the previous minutes, pages 3 to 7, 2A. Motion, Mayor Musichka, please.
Thank you very much, Deputy Mayor. I move that we approve the Policy and Priorities Committee meeting from Monday, March 27th, April 6th. What does this say? It's April 6th, yes, 2021 at 1 p.m. presented.
Okay, perfect, thank you. And I will call for the vote. All in favor? And that's unanimous and carried. Thank you very much. First up, reports and statistics, and we're going to hear from Chief Justin Andrew and Olds Fire Department quarterly report, please.
Very good. Thank you, Your Worship and Madam Chair. I would share my screen with you here, hopefully. Do we see our statistics?
Yes, we do.
Perfect. I love it when it works. So first quarter statistics for 2021, we were looking at a total number of 85 incidents, with 64 being urban, 5 rural. As far as our numbers go, this is typically on par with what we've seen in previous years. So there's no alarming figures that are standing out as a problem or a change from the norm. Our numbers were slightly down from what we would typically expect, but not in a substantial manner. And again, I think this is attributed typically to the COVID environment we're experiencing, where more people are at home and less travel. If you'll notice on our statistics, we have changed some of the coding and in the pie chart. And this was mentioned that this is our effort to give better information and more detailed reconciliation of our calls with our new records management program. And so going forward in the next quarter, we'll see even more labels per se, and it gives us just a better snapshot about what we're actually doing. So things in particular, when we stated fire previously, you would assume that those would all be, you know, major incidents or, you know, things of substantial nature. But you know, there's all sorts of things like a pot on a stove type call would be included in that. So now we're going to break those down a little bit. And so as we get more data going forward, you'll see that reported. Speaking of that in particular, if you look there, it says fire, cooking, and smoke ×2. So again, those types of calls would be broken down to those type of natures. So we didn't have any major fire incidents, but something that was related to cooking. So that's a common fire cause in the home. The next ones that we look through, there's 4 categories of alarm, no fire systems. So again, alarm, no fire, perceived emergency ×4. Again, that would be a piece where somebody activated a system, or a system was automatically engaged, but there was actually no fire involved. So that could be a faulty system, or perhaps there was actually an activation for like burnt toast or something to that effect, and there was no actual emergency. The next one is no fire accidental alarm. Again, these would be pieces where maybe workers or service personnel would set off an alarm due to work being done on the system or work being done in proximity. So again, the system worked properly, but it was not intended to be an accident or not intended to be an incident. The other one, alarm system activated. These are ones where there's no explanation, where sometimes a system will activate with no explanation. we have to go and check it out to make sure there's no emergency, and then either reset it or send it for service. And the last one is the carbon monoxide alarm. So when people phone in because their carbon monoxide detector is malfunctioned, or if there's a suspected carbon monoxide issue, then we would investigate. So again, this is breaking it down a little further to give you more idea. As far as those numbers, they look like a big piece of the pie, but because the numbers are small in the first quarter, it certainly is not a situation that we're concerned about. Obviously, we're following the fire bylaw, where if we have repeat offenders or systems that are calling us out repeatedly, then we could apply the principle of billing for multiple responses, but we are not at that point right now. Again, it's just simply because we're a busy organization in a larger community that we see these numbers from a variety of sources. Assistance to AHS, we've changed that program with our response as well, where these are calls that originate from EMS, whether it's medical first response, co-response, or lift assists, where we would be requested by EMS to assist them. These numbers are up substantially this year from this period last year. If we can remember all the way back to the first quarter, with COVID being new, we basically shut right down as far as response wise for medicals. We hardly did any. And so the first quarter here for us, those numbers are up substantially. Part of that is attributed again to COVID. Now that there seems to be, with the rise in cases in our community, there has been a recent increase in that call volume to assist EMS with ill patients and or people needing assistance. So I'm going to expect to see those numbers continue to hold steady in the second quarter going forward, and hopefully we'll see things flatten out with that as COVID is managed and hopefully minimized. If we look at the rural incidents, again, a small portion, only 5 incidents in the first quarter, so fairly minimal, and nothing there out of the ordinary. Responding down to the next section being motor vehicle collisions. This was a piece that we had promised to bring, is that we've broken out motor vehicle collisions and we've taken them out of urban and or rural statistics and created their own. So that total of 85 calls does not include 16 of these motor vehicle collision responses. So our number is actually higher than the 85. But you can see on the chart that we've had 7 urban motor vehicle collisions, 4 in rural Mountain View County, and 5 on numbered highways. And just for confusion's sake or lack thereof, the urban calls do not include Highway 27 or Highway 2A. Those would be actually on Town of Old's streets or avenues. So those numbers in the first quarter, the urban motor vehicle collisions are uncharacteristically high, especially for the first quarter. We typically wouldn't see that many, and there's no attributing factors that would explain why those have occurred. And it just, maybe we hit a spell of bad luck, but there wasn't, nothing that jumped out at us or the RCMP to indicate that there's a particular problem area that needs to be addressed. I'll stop there if there's any questions on these statistics or numbers before I proceed to the next piece.
Thank you very much, Justin. Are there any questions? Am I seeing hands?
Heather.
Heather? Councillor Ryan, please.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Bennett. I do have a question with regards to the number of incidents. So, Justin, the number of incidents is you've got 85, and the number below only add up to 69. And then you just said the vehicle collisions don't necessarily include those. So what is the difference then, if you could tell me?
Well, then I think you've caught me in a misinformation. Obviously that number does include our 16, because I think if my math's right, that gives us 85. So my apologies. When I looked at the first version of this, it wasn't included. So thank you for keeping me honest.
Okay, well, thank you very much. I have another question, but I'll wait my turn.
Who else is, I can't see hands. I see no hands. Go ahead, Councillor Ryan.
Yes, thank you. You had mentioned that the AHS numbers are up. So could you tell me, could we see a tracking of these incidents with this pie chart from one quarter to the next? So right now, all we're seeing is the first quarter of this year. I was wondering if we could see a comparison next time of quarter number 1 from, or quarter number 2 from 2020, just so that we can see what the difference is between the pie charts.
Yes, absolutely. And I explained this to the ICC members last week. Our new records management system, this is the first go that we've had with statistics. And so all of the things that we've been promising for some time are in the very near future with this. And so when we now apply the next quarter, we'll be even better prepared with that. But the current piece is because we got away from our old system and transitioned to the new. There's a lot of manual data entry that would have to happen to do that comparison from last year. So we were under the gun to get these in, so that didn't happen. But in our second quarter, we'll definitely start giving you those comparisons, and we'll extract them manually to show you that.
Okay, that's great. Thank you very much. And Deputy Mayor Bennett, if nobody else has another question, I have one more.
Yep, go right ahead.
Thank you. Could you just tell me what the public service involved?
I can't speak specifically. I don't know what those would have been, but typically a public service call in this category would be something like a sharps pickup if there was a needle or something found somewhere, or a dangerous item. The other piece would be as if somebody called in a concern of public safety concern somewhere in the community that we would go and check out and deal with. So I would have to look at those ones specifically to give you an answer, but that's the type of call that you would expect with that.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you. Anything further from anyone? No? Okay, Chief Andrew, are you going to carry on then?
I will.
Hey.
So if we scroll now, we can look at our first quarter comparison of 2020 and 2021 on our response demographics. So in our 2021 first quarter, our average shoot time, and this is the time that the pager is activated of our firefighters to the time that an effective response force leaves the hall. So that would mean that we would have a minimum of 4 firefighters leaving in a fire engine, and that's what effective response is. So that does not include either myself or a deputy chief responding as a one-person response. And so that's a very healthy number of 5 minutes and 15 seconds. Obviously, we've trimmed off 4 seconds from last year, so I guess guys are excited to go this year, and that's a good thing. But the comment that I want to make is that in a full-time fire service, such as Calgary, Edmonton, Red Deer, places like that, you typically expect to see a shoot time of 90 seconds or less. And that's with full-time firefighters in the hall able to respond 24/7. So for us to have a paid on-call service where everybody's responding from home or work or whatever, to have a 5-minute shoot time is pretty respectable and, substantially, obviously the cost is substantially less to not have firefighters paid to be there. But like I say, I'm very happy with those numbers. That's a very respectable target to hit. And I'd love to stay at that 5-minute mark and even get a little bit faster and go underneath in time. But those factors of who is available and where they're at when the time of call has that effect. The next one is the average travel time to scene. Now this number is inclusive of all of our responses in the first quarter, both urban and rural. And so our average travel time is 6 minutes, 22 seconds. And the data has to be careful here, because if we had one particularly long response into a far reaching rural setting, that could skew the results in the wrong direction. And alternatively, if we had a response that's very close to the fire station, it could skew it the other way. So again, when we come into the next quarter, we hope to have it reported specifically to you from previous requests, that we will have a breakdown of specific urban response time and rural. So you'll see the separation there. But again, 6-minute response in a collaborative fashion is still a pretty respectable time. And, for a large geographic area that we have, like say an average point of 6 minutes is pretty reasonable. The average response time is down a little bit at 12 minutes and 8 seconds. This time is taken of how much time is actually spent on scene at an incident. And based on our statistics of mostly the urban incidents being alarm type calls, they do not take a lot of time. Usually it's go do a quick walk around, reset the system or determine the issue and then clear up. And that's why that number is very low. So most of the time you see the trucks running around town, they're there for an average of 12 minutes. Obviously, again, the types of calls can change. And even in the last month, we've had a few incidents, obviously, that are not reported in this report, that we were there for hours. And so you'll see that number fluctuate based on the types of calls. But again, we don't use that as a huge marker. It's just something to report. Average firefighters on scene is 4.68, slightly down from the 2020 mark. Again, this has a bearing on the types of calls that we're experiencing. So again, with a lot of alarm type calls, we only typically send one truck with 4 firefighters and potentially a chief or a deputy chief in the command truck. So that would be 5 people. And again, the reason why that average would go below 5 is because many of our medical responses that we go to, we only send a minimum of 2 or potentially 3 people in that response truck. So again, we had 24 of those responses. So that's how it affects the average. Again, a pretty healthy number. There's no flags there that concern me. The last one that we look at is the average number of firefighters per incident, and it's 8.1 in comparison to last quarter of 9.49. What this number indicates is how many total firefighters are responding to each call. And so even though they do not respond, that's the number of people that are signing in when the call is initiated. This number, again, doesn't throw any flags at me. The great thing that we are utilizing with our mobile phone app on managing our responses is that all the firefighters can see who is coming, who potentially can come, or who's delayed. And our firefighters are great at managing this themselves, that they can see that if there is an adequate response responding to the hall with 4 or 5 members, then a lot of people will continue about their business and not come down. And so that's a great thing for us because it saves us money. Obviously, we don't have to pay members that don't come and sign in on the call, and it's still providing the effective service. So we pay on our phone app per member $12 per year, and that $12 saves us thousands of dollars in pay to allow an interactive response to manage that. So it's a great piece. So with that, that's the end of my presentation. So I'm open to any questions regarding these demographics or anything else that you would like to ask.
Thank you. Those numbers are very good. So congratulations to you and your team. And Councillor Harper is first up.
Thank you very much, Deputy Mayor Bennett. Just in reference to average response time, I think it will be confusing to members of the public who don't hear it's time spent on scene. And is it possible to actually use those words as part of your reporting, Fire Chief Andrew? Average time on scene?
I will speak with the keeper of our knowledge, and I will see if she can change that verbiage going forward for sure.
Yeah. And my other suggestion would be to break that down urban and rural, because I know that that when you have a major incident, whether it be town or rural area, it's quite a bit of time spent on a fairly major fire.
Yeah, yes, absolutely agreed. Like I say, as we go forward, we hope to be able to completely separate both urban and rural statistics, just because you don't want one influencing the other with information that can skew the numbers substantially.
Correct. And I just have one other question.
No other hands, go ahead.
Just in reference to mutual aid. So is that part of your pie charts where the fire department would request mutual aid from other departments, or if you attended to other areas where our community is mutual aid?
Yes, if we, in our new records management, it should identify that where it's mutual aid request or mutual aid provide. And again, there'll be differentiation of mutual aid requested of another urban municipality versus a rural, because again, that also has impact on all of our requests may not be to a rural nature. And so therefore we'll make sure that that's indicated as well.
Thank you very much.
Excellent. Anything further? If not, I'd seek a motion, please, to accept. Councillor Blatz.
Thank you to Deputy Mayor Bennett. I move that we accept for information the fire department's first quarter statistics report. Jeepers, must be Monday.
Thank you very much. There's no further questions or concerns. I'll call for the vote. All in favor? And that would be unanimous and carried. Thank you very much. And who will introduce the RCMP detachment quarterly report?
Give it to Director Andrew to do so.
Okay, thank you. Director Andrew, go ahead.
Great, thank you. We'll welcome Acting Staff Sergeant Jody Timchuk from the Olds RCMP Detachment Commander to report first quarter 2021.
Perfect.
Good afternoon, everybody. And you guys have the slide presentation that I sent you?
Yes, we do.
Okay, sounds good. Perfect. So I'm going to be talking the first quarter stats. So from January 1st to March 31st. And on the sheets that are provided to you, it shows a 5-year history. So the first one is persons crimes. So we're seeing a steady decline because this still, I guess, comparing to 2020, COVID was just starting. And so in 2021, we do see a slight decrease in crimes here. So common assaults, this does not include domestic assaults on this one. We're down from 14 in 2020 to 10 in 2021. So a slight decrease in everything except sexual assaults. For us, we had a few more files in 2020. We go to the next page. So property crimes, it's a continuous trend that we saw throughout the year in 2020. It's still lower than 2020. And it's really, our call volume is still holding and showing a decrease due to lockdowns and COVID measures in place, and not as many people as are moving around and able to stay at their properties and protect them. So throughout this first quarter, we are seeing quite a bit of a decline compared to 2020. Next page, please. So just point out in that while we have time and we really want to focus on reducing as much property crime and all crimes in matter, we have implemented checking on our repeat offenders that are on curfews and on conditions. So we're heavily active in that, and that reflects in the amount of files that we have from 2020 to 2021. With our lower call volume in other areas, it gives us more time to focus on some proactive measures. And in the first quarter, we saw from 34 in 2020 to 82 different files or charges in 2021. And so that's a slight increase there. We can go into the next page. Drugs, we've saw no files or no complaints in the first 3 quarters compared to 2020. Go to the next page. Vehicle collisions are down, and we saw a slight, almost 50%. We got showing 44% down in total collisions. And next page. So here we have other common police activities. And again, it's showing that they're down as well. We didn't include in this slideshow is mental health files. And So comparing mental health files that we had in the first quarter in 2020, we had 19. And in 2021, we had an increase to 28 mental health files for the first quarter. So that's what I have for the stats for 2021 for the first quarter. I will touch on a few other things. We're sitting at 4 members short to the attachment due to, we have 2 that are on light duties. 1 member that's on mat leave and is currently taking LWAP after her mat leave. And we have 1 member on pat leave for next couple months. We're actually looking at replacing the member that's on mat leave because she's taking some extended time after her mat leave. The RCMP is going to backfill that position, and hopefully we get that member at the attachment shortly. We have on May 10th, we have our new support staff that you guys hired, and they accepted the letter to start May 10th at the attachment. So I much appreciate the efforts and help getting that staffed. And do you guys have any questions in regards to the stats before I go on to, I'll touch briefly on just our priorities that we set for 2021 and 2022. If you guys have any, after you have any questions in regards to our stats.
Thank you very much. Are there questions? Councillor Blatz.
Yes, thank you, Deputy Mayor. Through you to our acting staff sergeant. Just for curiosity's sake, when you discussed mischief, and I realize that most of these people are at home, can you give me sort of just a general sense as what mischief would be?
Yes, so on this, it's not broken down. So there could be 2 options. It could be damage to property or disturbing, it's almost like disturbing the peace or causing enjoyment to somebody's household. So if you have, mischief could be broken into 2 sides of the charge. So I don't have the exact breakdown on how many files were related to mischief to property or mischief to your enjoyment. So it could be somebody having a party at their house and they want somebody removed and the person being unruly. So that could be considered mischief under these stats as well.
Okay. Oh, yeah. Good. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Any others? Seeing none, then Staff Sergeant Tinchuk, you go right ahead.
Right. So I last week I sent out confirming our policing priorities for the town of Olds, and I appreciate everybody's efforts in helping with the online survey and having discussions about it. And we want to really focus on what the community input. And a lot of times people say, well, you know what needs to be focused on, but we do like your input, the public's input. And even though that we set specific priorities for the community, we also, all crime is a priority for us, including persons crime. And we want to make sure that everybody knows that safe homes and safe communities is our priority. And but for the town of Olds, we've added for the priority to reduce major property crime, and that would be a large portion of that for us is focusing on the people that reside in Olds and around the area of Olds, is to anybody that's on a curfew or conditions. We're going to be making sure that we put a great effort into making sure they're obeying their curfew and the conditions. And so far, it's the numbers and the stats of our efforts are showing it's definitely helping, and we're finding that we're putting a lot more people in jail, and it's working well for us. Our second priority is road safety, and we want to focus on impaired driving. And third one is community engagement. Right now, we're obviously limited to how much community engagement we could do in person. But it's as things change or develop throughout the year, we want to make sure that our members are in the community as much as possible and involved in any efforts or community events that you guys do have in the town of Olds. And visibility, it's a common theme. It's hard to really please everybody in visibility, but I assure you that our efforts are there and in place, and the RCMP put new programs and efforts for us to do our job so we can be on the road and reduce the paperwork or have different duties assigned to our support staff to give the members efforts to be on the road. And I want to ensure everybody that we're doing everything we can be to be visible as much as possible, and the results, hopefully with the measures that we've taken, you guys do see us out there more often, and we are trying to cover all areas with the amount of members we have, but again, we want to focus our efforts on hotspots or places that are more crime prevalent, and but we are there for you, and we are patrolling your area. And so that's all I have to say about the priorities coming up. I do have with me your community resource officer, Constable Morley Statrick, and I'm going to give him a couple minutes just to update you guys just on what he has been doing in your community.
Perfect, thank you. Councillors, would you prefer to wait until we have this session?
No, I'd like to ask Staff Sergeant Timchuk a question.
Go ahead.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Bennett. In the survey that we did, there was a lot of concern about responsiveness. You know, the time that it took for someone that had a call in to respond to the property, and that seemed to be a big concern. So I see that's on, when I look at our minutes, that seems to be one of your priorities is responsiveness, along with engagement and visibility, which was OPAC's as well, engagement and visibility. But I'm just wondering about the responsiveness, because a lot of people feel that it just seems to take too long for the RCMP to get to their property, and or they're informed that, you know, take your pictures and bring them in to us, we'll deal with it then. You know, and that seems to be a big concern for our residents, that type of response.
Yeah, so the RCMP has taken measures into try to take some duties off of the members that are working in the field. So we have what we call a callback unit. So there are RCMP members that are working in an office. They're actually general duty members that are assigned to the office. And so if it's related to a theft that happened, sometimes we get thefts that are reported that happened within the last month. They don't know. They don't, our call center will determine that it's not a priority for a detached member to respond to immediately. So they'll sometimes dispatch a file to our callback unit where they'll have an officer call them, not necessarily determine if a member needs to go, or they'll discuss it with the complainant. And that's the way, like, so smaller, if it's a smaller mischief, smaller theft, no evidence from talking to the complainant, it might not even get dispatched to the members in Olds. The callback unit would be dealing with it. And if there's something in relation to a call in Olds or rural, I'm not sure in regards to the response time, our members have to make a decision if they're busy on another call to make it a priority, or depending on which files are coming in first, to deal with those files. And I assure you that.
I guess supplemental, I guess to part of that is, I realize it goes to another call center, and those people are supposed to, you know, get back to the you know, the people that called in, but there seems to be possibly a miscommunication as to the time frame as to when they get the call back, or if they do get the call back. Like,
yeah, and
it seems to be a lag there or not even a callback. So I think that's maybe something that we need to discuss further and work on.
Yeah, and it's, I can't, unless I have a specific file to look at or the reason, but at the end of the day, we should be calling you. And as soon as possible and as soon as practical. Like if a member, I mean, obviously we're limited to how many members we have on shift. And if they're busy and I'll say if they're free, they should be calling the complainant back and either getting back to them in a timely manner or say, look, we're tied up with a file and we will get to you, or make arrangements down the road if it has to be in a few hours, or are we talking a few minutes? But our members should be communicating with the public and letting them know specifically on what action is going to be taken or done. And if it goes to the callback unit and it's not our detachment, we really don't have any communication or saying, because they're making the decisions from their end and looking after that file.
Councillor Harper, then Councillor Ryan. You're on mute.
Thank you very much. Through you to Sergeant Timchuk. The statistics that you provided to council today are just for the urban area, but I'm just wondering if in future we could also see the rural statistics, but because that also indicates how often, because Olds works on a post system, how often our RCMP are responding to rural calls to see how they're busy on the rural side as well.
Okay, sounds good. I could do that.
Great. Councillor Ryan.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Bennett. Just to follow up on Councillor Overwater's comments with Sergeant Timchuk, would it be possible to try to provide information to the public on the response times? You know, something in the paper saying, when we get a call, this is the process, because I don't think a lot of people understand that there's that kind of process is in place and how long it takes for, you know, from the original call, if it's not an emergency, how long it takes for it to trickle down to the local officers and how long it takes for them to respond. I think people think that maybe they pick up the phone and they make a call and they should be hearing back from you in 10, 15 minutes, when that's really not the case if it's not an emergency. And I just think that might be better. Like when you talk about engagement as being one of your priorities, that could be something that you could put out to the public a little bit more to just as an educational point.
Yeah, for sure.
Okay, perfect. Anything further? No, next up, then we'll have an update by the resource officer, please.
Okay, thank you.
Good afternoon.
Hello.
Okay, so I can give you an update of kind of what's been going on in my world lately. Obviously, COVID has had a huge impact, especially of recent as COVID has increased again. So we started to do some visits into the schools, primarily Holy Trinity and the high schools. And then COVID increased again, and that kind of put a real kibosh into the school visits. Holy Trinity, I went into, we started doing some visits, grade 5s, 6, 7, and 8s, and did presentations to them on cell phone safety. A lot of talks on some snitches get stitches was one of the themes there. A lot of that is to do with some of the students watching TV, and of course, talking about TV. A lot of the TV is kind of based upon American TV and what they see. So we kind of clarified a lot of that. Then we did a lot of presentations into the high schools, to grade 9s on substance abuse. All the grade 9s were talked to, and cover that off on fentanyl was kind of the ending of that presentation, and signs and symptoms. And then of course, the Good Samaritan Drug Overdose Act was covered off. So they all know, of course, what to do in the case if someone inadvertently was given or taken the substance fentanyl, and they saw, the signs and symptoms, and then knew what to do in a case of who to contact, and were not afraid of contacting for help, so that they knew that the Good Samaritan Drug Overdose Act was there to help preserve life and not to cause anybody to be arrested because they were there and someone did take the substance inadvertently. So we're starting to do all that and get in contact with a lot of the schools and a lot of the groups to get that going. And then, of course, COVID hit, and now, of course, the high school grade 9s to 12 are back online because they have a high number of cases there. I also met with the Fisher Farm, Olds Association for Living, Padnoma, and the accredited supports. We talked about how the RCMP can work with their clients and to assist them in a lot of those individuals have some history and dealing possibly with the RCMP, but then if they needed help from the RCMP, how can we help them with getting statements and getting help to them? So that was really good, and that kind of helped some of our members understanding dealing with them and how to help them. But then, of course, COVID does impact that also, and there's some contacts made with Fisher Farm and that world. Then contacts were made with all of the senior homes, but of course, there is absolutely no visiting and going into the senior homes at all during COVID, but primarily to deal with contacts with the seniors on a lot of the internet fraud, a lot of just going there and spending time visiting with them and getting to educate them on protecting themselves from any people. One of the calls I did previous to when COVID started taking off was one of the seniors' home, primarily the one across from Co-op, was some of the seniors were just letting people in. When they would come knock on a door, they would just let them in. So we talked about safety as well. You don't just let someone in because someone knocks on a door. You have to clear, you got to make sure you follow certain protocols. Well, one of the big ones was the party program, which was coming up here on May 7th, but of course, which got canceled. So the high school is going to kind of do a whole mental health week. We were going to do, of course, presentations there for the rest of the school on the substance abuse and the Good Samaritan Drug Overdose Act. And then a fellow who I know Eric does know, Gord Buck, was going to come down and have the driving simulator there for the party program, to set up the simulator to show the students and let the students participate in driving and see what happens when they drive under the influence of alcohol or the influence of substances of drugs. And we were talking about the possibility with Gord of having some of our dignitaries in town, which we were going to contact to have them tried also with the students, to just see the students, to have some dignitaries. And of course, some of those dignitaries are on the call today, but we never did contact any of you because it got canceled. And that's something I talked to Gord about that we would do every year during the party program. And I think that would be a great community building process for the students to get involved and to have the community involved in that every year, because it gives the students firsthand. And in my experience in the schools, the students always say they always talk about when us as enforcement officers would come and talk to them about, distracted driving or being safe is, well, we always talk to them, but they never get to really practice it. Well, Gord would have that simulator that they can really go hands-on. And then we can also, as adults, go hands-on and kind of experience it ourselves. So we kind of can also experience what we're talking about also. The other thing that we've started to work on, and Chief Andrew and of course acting staff Timachik we're working on in conjunction with Mike Keeling from the college, is one of my passions is, of course, is the school safe plans. And we have a very unique system here in the CLC with the school. Is we have the school, we have the college, we have the town with the fitness center up there, and then we have, of course, the government with the Children and Family Services and the Alberta Works there. So we were talking of, how do we respond if there ever was a situation that, heaven forbid, but was similar to what happened in Leduc. How do we respond? And of course, Olds is a small community. Coming from Airdrie, where we have a lot of resources there, but Olds, we have a small community. So talking with Chief Andrew, how do we set that up? How do we respond if we ever had an incident? And that's one of the things we're going to work on, is getting that response kind of put in place, communication. How do we communicate with fire radio, police radio, the whole system. So that's one of the things, even with Michael's got his staff there at the college, how do we respond? So who's going to be our, getting that all set up if we ever did have an incident, to making sure we know how it's going to be handled. If we're doing a lockdown for the high school, how does the college do their security lockdown? How does the Alberta Works do their lockdown? How does the town get involved? Because they've got the fitness center up there. So that's one of the things we talked about. The plan for that would hopefully be to have it in place for, I'm looking at hopefully the start of the new school year would be kind of the goal, to have something kind of as a start, and to try and get that also in place for all of the schools for the new school year, and to make sure that all of our staff at the schools are also on board with understanding it. One of my experiences is that the staff at the schools, when we talk about lockdowns, it creates a lot of anxiety for them. And I like to bring that down for them to where it is when they do a fire drill. When they do a fire drill, they're all calm, they're relaxed, because they've done that since they were little boys and girls in school, and now they're educators. When the fire alarm goes off, they're calm, and they just do it in a calm, relaxed way. But when they hear the word lockdown, they get a lot of anxiety. And I'd even like to get that even brought forward to the town, in the town office. I mean, you guys are at risk there too, that I'd like to have you guys understand, what would happen if there was ever an incident and a lockdown. How would we respond to the town office? So you guys understand how we're responding as police there too. So you understand the terms. What is a lockdown? What is a holding us secure? What is a shelter in place in our world? And how do we respond to each one of those? So that's kind of in a nutshell what's been going on in my world. But of course, COVID has really put a damper on me actually responding in person to a lot of these places. But in short, there's still been a lot of phone calls, a lot of action been going on behind the scenes, not so much in person. I have been in a lot of these places in person, but not as much as I'd like to be. I did a couple presentations, most recently to the parent council for the high school of what I have done in the past at the schools and how I've set up the plans of what I wanted to do grade by grade. And so they understand what's expected and what the plan is. And as a guest in the school, they understand kind of what value we can add as a police officer in the schools going forward. So if there's questions, I'd gladly answer them now.
Thank you very much. It's very impressive, all the programs that are hopefully going to be in place by September. And I will take some questions. Councillor Overwater, then Thompson.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Bennett. I might have missed it. Did you say that you go over to Deer Meadow, and do you go into the elementary school at all?
Yeah, I've talked. Went to Deer Meadow, and I went into the elementary school. And Councillor Overwater, I guess the way I've presented it is basically, I'm a guest at any school. I go in there and I presented it to the schools that I would gladly come in at any time. I'm a guest. I can't just walk in and say that, I'm coming in and this is what I'm doing. So I offer what I can do. And then at any time I can come in, and I've got a presentation. I'd love to come and present it to you guys as kind of what I've got, a slide presentation. And that's why I did it to the parent council, to show them what I can offer. And when I went into Deer Meadow, I've been there a few times and kind of offered some of the things that I can do. And basically it's as the guest, I've been there a couple of times before COVID kind of really hit hard. And, there hasn't been a lot of requests from there. There's been a lot from Holy Trinity that I've been there a lot lately. And at the high school, I've been quite a bit. The elementary school, I've been there a few times. I've been to Horizon, but Deer Meadow's been a little quieter. And I really don't force myself in, because again, I'm a guest, and I understand the way I present it is that, you know, I am a guest at the school. I can't force myself in. They have to see the value. So.
Well, I myself would prefer if you could actually come and do a presentation to council so that we know what you're presenting to the school, so that we're all on the same page and we know what's going on. I think that would be great if we could arrange that. Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. I would love to do that.
Perfect. Councillor Thompson.
Yes, thank you, Deputy Mayor Bennett. I'd like to just say thank you to Mr. Stachuk and Timchuk for their work. Mr. Stachuk, I was a funeral director in Tabor many years ago when there was an incident there, and I don't think we ever want bad things to happen in our schools or in our community, but when they do, it's nice to know there are great people that can respond. And if we have a plan in place like you're speaking of, it can be less scary for those involved. So just kudos to yourselves for that. And I know the forces helped back up our RCMP and municipal enforcement recently in a few other circumstances. And so thank you to all of our municipal enforcement people for the work you do.
Thank you.
Any further questions? Seeing none, I would accept a motion, please. Councillor Thompson.
Yes, I would move that we accept the first quarter report from the Olds RCMP detachment.
Thank you. And call for the vote. All those in favor? And that is carried. And anonymous. Sorry about that. How about unanimous? Very good. Thank you so very much for attending today. Appreciate that.
Thank you.
Next up, we have
Deputy Mayor Bennett.
Yes.
Could I just request that administration work with the RCMP and I'm going to say your name wrong, so I'll just say your first name, Morley, to get a presentation to council.
Yes, please.
Thank you.
And CAO Merritt's nodding his head. So, Councillor Harper.
Just wondering if this was the last presentation that Sergeant Timchuk was going to be providing to Olds Town Council. And if so, we would like to thank him for all of his service to our community.
Yes, indeed.
I'm not sure when his replacement of our new staff sergeant is coming or not. So
I think he's had to leave. I think he's gone to another meeting at 1:30 here.
Okay.
Yeah. No, that's okay. We just wanted to acknowledge that.
Okay. Just, if I may, Madam Chair, Deputy Mayor. Yeah, I believe, and correct me if I'm wrong, Mr. CAO, we don't always know exactly when these posts get filled. It depends on house sales and things like that.
Oh,
so
right.
There's, it's probably an undetermined amount of time before our new staff sergeant's in place. So.
Okay. Thank you. All right, thank you for that information. And next up is our very own Olds Municipal Enforcement Quarterly Report. And who will be introducing?
I'll let Director Andrew introduce. Sergeant.
Okay, Director Andrew, you're up.
Great, thank you. So we have Sergeant Christensen here to produce Municipal Enforcement First Quarter Statistics 2021. Thank you, Sergeant Christensen.
Thank
Hello.
you. Sean, can you put up the slideshow, please?
He is, yes.
All right, so Deputy Mayor Bennett, Your Worship and Council, this is our 2021 first quarter report for municipal enforcement. Go on to the next page, please. So you can see I've done a lot of changing to the spreadsheet. I have now been here for over a year now, so I can actually make comparisons with our new process. One of the things that you'll notice is I've done the percentage for increases and decreases in our stats. If you have any questions on the stats, please let me know. I won't go through them individually. I will just make a mention that in February, our numbers were a little bit lower, and this was due to one of our officers being off for a couple of weeks due to a family issue. But March has been picking up for us as well. Go on to the next page, please. So we base our stuff on crime classes. Our biggest one, of course, is 73, almost 74% of our time is dealing with community standards. 12% is animal control, and the rest is 30 or 10% is traffic. The rest is all smaller incidences. So we had 376 total files for the first quarter for 2021. Next page, please. So our method of reporting, as you can see, majority of our time, 65% is officer observed. So this is our officers out patrolling throughout the community and seeing any of these type of things, community standards or animal or traffic stuff. Where we have 12, almost 13% is coming through dispatch services. The rest is all through emails or staff, administration, that type of stuff. Next page, please. So our violations, we had 365 violations. Majority of ours were provincial warnings, where we had 255 warnings and only 52 actual tickets written for provincial. Municipal, we were 6.6% warnings. Positive tickets for the first quarter were 21 on that. We'll discuss that a little bit later on in the presentation. Traffic violation notices are when we give a warning to somebody for vehicle equipment regulations that we are asking them to repair, such as, I don't know, mud flaps, wide tires, that type of stuff. Next, please. Contact reports. This is just a report that whenever we get a call from somebody where we don't have any follow-up, where there's just a question, we put it in as a contact report, not a file. So we had 141 of those type of contacts throughout the first quarter. Our violations versus warnings. So we issued in the first quarter $53,479 worth of violations. Warnings were 41,000 and change, and our actual violations that we wrote were $11,000. Now, having seen those numbers, those are the gross numbers. That's before the province takes their cut out of it. This is our officer availability. So we have three categories. We have where we have an officer on duty. So 90% of the time in the first quarter, we did have an officer on duty, where we had 8% of the time we had no officer on duty. So that could be whether our officer started at 11:30 or the call came in after 5:30, or we had nobody on at all. And unavailable is, for instance, right now where I'm in council, unavailable to take a call. So we're on duty, but it's unavailable to take the call right away. Next. So I'll just go into what we've kind of done over the first quarter. Again, we were busy with snow removal with our public works department, worked really closely with them. Did really well. We had 104 violations issued, 91 were warnings, 13 were actual tickets. So the actual tickets are people that had a warning already and didn't learn the first time. So we give them a reminder that they need to move their vehicles for snow removal. Great Neighbors Program, again, busy with that. First quarter, we did about 20 of them. We've done 119 to date. We haven't had a lot lately, but if anybody does go through the program, we will be there with our first responder partners. Sidewalk snow and ice removal. Again, we were really busy with that. We issued 237 warnings in regards to snow over the first quarter. Compliance was really well. We only had a few where we actually had to send in a contractor to go in and actually clean someone's sidewalk because they failed to do it within the time allotted. So a small portion of our job is traffic and traffic initiatives. So January was Intersection Safety Month. We just, spent our time monitoring intersections for safety. Education, of course, was our focus. And we worked well with communications and did a bunch of social media posts and DigiKnows. February was Distracted Driving Month. Again, we just did a lot of education. We did issue 5 warnings for that time. And March was seatbelt awareness. And again, we're just educating motorists in regards to that. So our peace officers and most enforcement agencies throughout the province of Alberta follow the Alberta Traffic Safety Calendar. So April was Speed Month, May is Motorcycle Safety, and June is Commercial Vehicle Safety. We will ensure that we follow that calendar, but we do different initiatives throughout the community on those things, but we'll also do anything else that's outside of those enforcement. Next page, traffic and then more. We've been spending time in our patrol zones or school zones and our playground zones. In the first quarter, we issued 49 tickets were issued, 41 were warnings, 8 were violations. As you can see, that one there, although I blinded out the vehicle, that vehicle was not the vehicle I stopped. I was actually sitting stationary in a school zone, which you can probably see which school zone it was. And I did actually get somebody that was double the speed limit at 60 kilometers an hour during school zone. So we did have a conversation. So again, we've been out doing that as well. We've had a lot of calls in regards to people not stopping for the alternating red lights for the school buses. So we have been out working with that. And we've been working well with the RCMP in doing some of those joint efforts as well. Next page, please. So just an update. We're now changing directions from snow to unsightlies. So we'll be working on trees overhanging the sidewalks and alleys and unsightly properties. We are going to be working diligently on cleaning up the graffiti throughout the town. We, of course, hired our summer student, and that's going to be one of the projects that I'm going to have this person working on, is actually getting all of the utility boxes and graffiti throughout the town cleaned up. And of course, bike patrols have started up. Both myself and Officer Reed have been out a little bit. The weather hasn't been really great for out bike patrols, but we will be out doing that as well. We'll be working with the kids on bike and helmet safety. I was hoping to be able to do a bike rodeo this year, but with COVID, we've just decided not to do that. But if anybody wants to contact us and ask us to help their children learn bike safety, we'll be more than happy to help with that. Next slide. Positive ticket program. Although we run it all year round, winter is always a bit slower, but we've been out busy here. There's almost been 100 issued just in the last month or so. So we're back at it and getting positive reviews from the community in regards to that. And that is my presentation. So I'm willing to take any questions that might come forward.
Excellent. Thank you very much for that information. And are there questions? Councillor Blatz, please.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Bennett. I just threw you to Sergeant Christensen. I want to commend you on the Great Neighbors program and your positive ticketing. I read very many positive social media remarks where you'd gone and handed out positive tickets, particularly to younger kids in schools, and they were all very complimentary and really thought that it was a great program. And I think you should be commended for that. And you and both Sergeant or Corporal Reed, CPO Reed. So it's a great program.
And next, Councillor Harper, please.
Thank you very much, Deputy Mayor Bennett. Through you to Staff Sergeant Christensen. I'd also like to commend you in reference to the positive ticket program. I think that's great for the kids and their parents. And I'd also like to thank the business that's supporting that program as well. I just have one question further in reference to warning versus tickets issued. You did mention that in reference to parked vehicles and the snowplow routes, that you did go back and actually issue some tickets. But what's the percentage from going, you say that you issued, I forget how many warning tickets, and what's the percentage where you actually go back to issue an actual ticket?
Through the chair to yourself, Councillor Harper. So we monitor with our computer program that we use for reporting. We will document everybody's license plate number, for instance, with snow removal. So when we go to there, we can pull up the license plate number. So we've known that we've given them a warning prior, or we've given them a ticket prior. That gives us the knowledge to know whether we would do that. So again, it's all kind of based on how many people don't adhere to the signs, and that's when we will issue a violation or a warning, depending on that. So going forward, though, I'm going to say that we've given 2 years of warnings. Going forward, all snow removal tickets will be tickets. They won't be warnings anymore.
And just further to that.
Yeah, further.
And further to that, now that we have the street sweepers out, and our staff are putting signs out in plenty of time, and I still see people are not moving their vehicles. I guess when does it quit becoming warnings or plate, information?
Right. So through yourself to Councillor Harper. So we did do the street sweeping. We worked really closely with them again. We did issue a large amount of warnings. I don't have the numbers because, of course, those were done in April, not in the first quarter. So I could get those numbers for you if you request them or require them. We did issue a fair amount of warnings to people because this is sort of a new process for that. We went with warnings this time, but of course, next time again, it'll be violations if they haven't had a warning, or violations going forward.
Thank you.
Very good. Anything? Oh, Councillor Ryan.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Bennett. Through you to Sergeant Christensen. Could you tell me exactly, so you have about, of the tickets, 11,007 something, whatever. How much of that can we expect? Is there a portion of that already within the 1,800 that is on the bottom of the total that you have? And how much is can we expect to still get out of that, and how long it takes?
Through the chair to Councillor Ryan. So essentially, when we issue a violation, it kind of goes out of our hands. So we lose 40% to the government. Mm-hmm. That covers all of the court costs that are, for the judge, the traffic commissioner, the prosecutor, the court staff, etc. So we lose 40% right off the top. The other 60% we get, it can take up to 2 years to get that money. The reason for that is some people, when I issue you a violation, you don't go to court, you get convicted in absence, you get the letter in the mail, you don't do anything with it, you go in to register your vehicle, and bang, you've got that ticket on before you can pay for your registration, you have to pay the ticket. Now, some people register the vehicles for 2 years at a time. So that's why I'm saying it can take up to 2 years before we actually see that money. But and I think after 5 years, the government writes it off because they haven't been able to collect it. So that could be, you move out of the province, and because Alberta doesn't do a collection service, it doesn't get selected or doesn't get paid, then it just gets written off after about 5 years.
Okay, thank you very much. It was interesting to hear that, and for the public as well to hear it.
Councillor Blatz.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Bennett. On your traffic and traffic initiatives, and I know we discussed this briefly here at a meeting or so ago, and particularly when you're monitoring speed limits, such as school zones, which I think it's great when you sit there, that often just slows everyone right down. I'm wondering if in the downtown core or the uptown core, pardon me, if we're going to have to consider perhaps making that all 40 kilometers throughout that downtown core. And refresh my memory, I believe we discussed it once, I just don't remember where or when, particularly with having the Olds Boys and Girls Club in that location. And you do see them walking along the sidewalks, and they have their little chain link rope, and they all follow along very, very obediently, which is great to see. But I'm just wondering if that's something perhaps maybe we should consider, and what your thoughts are on that.
Through chair to Councillor Blatz. I mean, council can change speed limits within the town. That's their, they can do that through motions and etc. Whatever the speed limit is, I mean, I've never really monitored speed down there. I know that most people, when I am down there with my radar unit, they are under the 50 kilometers, and a lot of times they are under the 40 as well, just by courtesy than anything. So it would be something that council would have to look into.
Thank you. I think something to consider for sure.
Excellent information. Thank you, Eric. And I would accept a motion, please. Councillor Ryan.
Oh, thank you very much, Deputy Mayor Bennett. I move that we accept the report from our Sergeant Christensen with regards to the first quarter stats of our enforcement.
Thank you. All right, I'll call for the vote. All those in favor? And that's carried, and it is unanimous. Thank you. Next up, we have 3D, Economic Development Secretariat Quarterly Report. And who will introduce?
Deputy, and I have Larry Wright, our chair of the Olds Economic Development Secretariat, here to do a presentation, I believe also to make an introduction as well. So with that, Larry's here for his quarterly update.
Welcome, Mr.
Yes, good afternoon. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, we can.
Okay, very good, very good. I always have to check. Yeah, thank you for allowing us some time this afternoon to talk about economic development and things that are happening and where we're going and that nature. I would ask Sean if he could bring our presentation on up to speed. Sean? There we go. Okay, move to the next slide, Sean, please. Thank you very much. In any case, in the town of Olds here, we're supporting our budget expectations and plan 2021 to 2023. Some of the good news coming out of COVID is we still have a lot of interest in light industrial development, and we're hoping if we continue to work in that regard, so we'll be able to find some permits for Kyle and Scott, and maybe even some cash for our treasurer group there. In any case, things are looking positive in spite of the third wave of COVID, even as this morning we talked to a group out of Vancouver. Moving right along. We had a council proclamation February 22nd supporting EDA Economic Development Week, May 9th to 15th. As you can guess, that's coming up next week. One of the things that was kind of ironic was the town of Olds was the first council to proclaim Economic Development Week in Alberta. And we received a lot of online recognition and brand recognition through many of the social systems and that. And Kelly Lloyd could probably attest to that as well, as a lot of our AUMA friends have been noting the Olds brand to Kelly. So that's kind of fun. And of course, me being me, I've had to poke the bear with the other communities asking why were they so slow and why are they not moving ahead? Just because we got to do that, right? Good job. And thanks very much, Council, for supporting that early proclamation for us. Now we get more interesting even now. We have our new economic development coordinator just started April 29th. Her name is Cheryl Schultz. Unfortunately, we didn't have the full screen and everything today for her new computer setup, but she is online with her iPhone, and you'll probably notice her name in there. Cheryl has a unique background and tremendous training at Ryerson out of Toronto, the University of Waterloo, and many other educational institutes in this country, and even one from the USA. She has a broad background working with some of the Canadian federal government industries and agencies. And if you tweak her and really ask her, you might find out that she's done some of that work with the UN. Okay. She also has worked in the Bayfield area along Lake Huron, which was tourist rich, and was impacted in past days by the USA market when it crashed in 2008. And a lot of the American folks from Detroit, Port Huron and that area sort of pulled back from the tourist belt and industry there. And so she was really heavily involved in the recovery, the Great Lakes area and Huron County in that specific area. She's also then shifted out to Alberta, which, you know, the land that you need to be at, and Spruce Grove, and recently had been doing a lot of work with the city of Calgary. So we welcome her. If you know your orange personality color, she's very much outgoing, and we welcome her. And I don't know whether we can get her on to say just hello or not. Cheryl, can you? I don't know.
Hello, everybody. I'm very excited about this opportunity and looking forward to working with all of you. Thank you.
Welcome.
I think we've tried to introduce Cheryl to as many folks as we possibly can in a relatively short time here. And we've just about buried her with statutory documents, IDPs, MDPs, programs that Kelly's developing. We had her in a long session this morning here working on tourism strategy with our records expert. And they're developing a lot of work for me. So anyway, welcome, Cheryl. Stop by, say hello with your mask, and make sure you follow all the AHS guidelines, okay? Thanks very much, everybody, on that one. Okay, our Economic Development Secretariat, we keep moving ahead here. We would really like to note, as usual, our current members, Everett Page with the Olds Institute, who's been a solid rock and support for us in environmental, business, and many, many other aspects. The really unique changes are Chamber of Commerce, where we have Cassidy Kirsch and a number of new board members come on stream, and I believe they just completed their strategic program. MJ could probably comment on that if she has any points right now she'd like to bring out. What Chamber?
Councillor Harp.
Thanks, Larry. No, until they're actually approved by the board, I'd just like to continue your discussion today.
Okay, I thought I'd ask. It's all good.
Thank you. Thank you for the opportunity. You
betcha. Thank you very much. In any case, we have had so many presentations to try to educate and train our membership. Donna Lard, Alberta Government, Alberta Innovates, Matt, Community Futures, Carrie, Alberta Labor, Nicole. We've had SPOG, the new environmental team, and Olds here. Red Deer Tourism was excellent. We had the chair of the tourism group speak to us about what the opportunities were throughout our region here. Emprise, which represents new science and technology and has contracts with 3 provincial governments. Doug Griffith, who you may remember his political name, 13 Ways, talking about economic development in the future. And of course, our own SAWA project, which we're heavily involved in, both the board and the executive. Okay, moving right along, we had set the tourism policy statement previously, and now with Cheryl here, primary areas focus to start is our tourism strategy. Okay, and due to the amount of time we're spending on COVID right now, I'm a little bit behind in going out with our BRI&E request for board members, and that we have went through our process with Kelly, Shelley, and Marcy and that, so we make sure we were doing it appropriately in an open and transparent manner. Okay. In some of our past presentations, we talked about the energy substation, Olds 55S capacity, where we ran into limitations. And the likes of that, we have had discussions through CMAG with TC Energy, the natural gas, and their alternatives that they're working on. They have a major construction effort through from Grand Prairie right through past Didsbury in that area. There is quite a lot of work going on in the Didsbury Olds area in terms of their substations and that. Part of our discussion, we also looked at what the future was of hydrogen as a source of energy. And then TC Energy also has a relationship with Bruce Nuclear, or as I used to call it, Douglas Point when I was trained there. And a discussion about mini nukes. And that's something that's entered the Canadian discussion and international discussion lately in terms of if you're worried about carbon and other aspects like that, mini nukes on an international basis, and even in Canada, in New Brunswick, Ontario, and 4 places in Saskatchewan, plus 1 in Alberta here are currently under discussion. They usually bring and generate power of 300 megawatts to 1,000 megawatts of energy. But I imagine there is concerns out there given some of the past situations in Japan and Russia. Anyway, Ukraine, I should say, probably. So anyway, but we're not just stopping or looking at different forms of energy. There is one more from Siemens that they are looking at liquid CO2 in place of other systems in that to produce energy. Regional projects under discussion. Last November, there's a project for converting straw to pressboard. It's centered right at this point in time near Three Hills. Our economic development support person for Knee Hill contacted me last November, and we've been in discussion about supply support and what that may look like for Olds, but also in the region, and if that project goes ahead. It is $850 million, and that's a hard target right now for the economy to supply and absorb on that type of project. Our Sawa Energy from Waste Project, which we're a part of, is a $500 million venture. We're well on our way with technology, and we are looking at alternatives for funding. There's a lot of interest from technology and industrial providers, and we do have two sites. We have a primary site and a secondary site, so we do have options depending on how any discussions go. And we are under a restricted discussion document, so I have to be very careful. We worked with Dr. Trash Nibber, OSG, soft gels, with a number of other agencies in the country here to see what we can do, whether it be through Ottawa or the provincial government in Alberta, to raise their profile in terms of pharmaceutical products, and that included many other agencies. So we really appreciate Dr. Nibber and all his hard efforts in the community here. Okay, moving right along. Brownfield redevelopment, the business core. We've talked about the Cipolley building in the past. We also need to recognize the CP rail lands as they change their trackage and their crossings, which created a bit of pain there for Scott and the operations team just a short while ago. We'll leave it at that. And then we have our old fire hall, which we have to look at in the near future on how we can redevelop that. And I think there's some great opportunities there. So we'll be doing some more work and bring other reports forward in June on brownfield work. Wetlands, trying to move along fairly quickly here. One of the things we found, if you look at our different properties, whether they be Southeast Industrial or the new annexation areas, or out on the west side, the areas near the what we call Loblaws and bordering on the south side of Highway 27, our real estate and our landholders in that are having interesting discussions around wetlands and how the Alberta government legislation impacts on slowing development and or how they contribute to the urban wetlands areas. We are looking at and have started and initiated discussions with Legacy Land Trust to see if we need to form an urban land trust, but also what we're talking to some of the real estate industry folks would be some workshops to help them help themselves, their clients in our development. So that's another one on the list, and we've started with plans and other things. Tourism links, Red Deer Tourism looks like we have some really great opportunities for regional collaboration this year. And when we had the presentations and have had discussions since November with Red Deer Tourism, that seems to be the case. And I think we'll point Cheryl in that direction very shortly. As we mentioned, we're spending a tremendous amount of time supporting Jen, Scott, and the whole ICP group on COVID issues and recovery, where we're going in the future and things like that. Moving right along, we were really encouraged by the creativity of our food business service industries, and we really appreciated the work of the news media in supporting the patios, or small business, and everyone in the core in the many outlying areas on the vicinity of the core area here in Olds. And just thought it was a solid article. Again, supporting Jennifer and the business community. We work behind the scenes on business incentives with the survey. And I think I read through 89 of them so far. Now Jennifer and some of us are going to compile a detailed report and support Jen. I believe for the next council meeting, we should have the full report available. CAO, is that on the mark there, I believe?
That is correct, Mr. Wright.
Okay, just wanted to make sure we confirmed that in a positive manner. Okay, we've updated our lists for business incentives and where we're at with relaunch incentives or support for the business community. The speed tests were kind of interesting coming out of some of the trials that we had carried out in-house here with our fire services, emergency services. As we've noted, the business survey we initiated April 23rd. CEOs confirmed the next council meeting. We'll have a full report on that. I really have to send some kudos out to our pharmacies. They have did such an awesome job picking up the pace on vaccinations. When we initially had the first two, they were caught a little bit by surprise with early deliveries, but came through with yeoman service. They were vaccinating 70 people a day were their targets. And in the first six days, they had vaccines available. They did between 800 and 900 area residents. And so kudos to the whole pharmaceutical and support agency out there. They've done a great job. We've noted before, zero tax increase, and the council just had the debate on, and just noting education tax and a couple other ones in there. The waived business license fees are noted, and then waived development fees till June 30th. I believe there's some additional business support items under discussions. I'll have to leave that for the time being until I can confirm what exactly the shape and fashion that will take form. Shovel ready projects, spring's here. We should be able to dig some roads up somewhere. One of the difficulties we ran into lately, our federal government decided they would bring out a new budget. So we've been out there trying to decipher and discern what of their programs that go into 2021, 2022, and 2023, which are about 10 or 12 of those, crossover and requires some of the provincial budgets to support that, and where they meet and what their initiation dates are and closing dates are for applications. So this is a short form. MNP did this one and we took advantage of that. We've had ATB do some input for us on those things. And just about 5 hours after we went to put our agenda in for this meeting, we received 14 more bits and pieces of programs from Alberta Labor and the government, and they did notice on 8 of them that we're trying to correct and clear up what is the intake dates for those programs and how they cross over into the federal programs. So some of this information is a repeat, and we'll update that as we go along. And some of these programs are still in process. And then we've been able to pick up some of the federal government programs. If Sean, if you go down to slide 11, that would be good. Thank you. And we're trying to look carefully. We'll update all the data information on these because eligible organizations on this one program until March 31. And this is where we're having some fun and games, and we have to spend some time to support our business interests. On the next slide, 12 there, you can pick up the extensions, what we've already confirmed till the end of June on RIF programs and CEBA requirements. And that, so thank you. We had presented part of our 2021 community profile previously, but I didn't think we'd spend adequate time on recognizing the businesses, our top employers, top 10 industries, occupations, and we'd made in the profile about 15 major changes to our type of profile. It's a 4-pager right now. Now we've been asked by CAPE to be part of a committee and actually add other enhancements and improvement because they really like Town of Olds work and City Red Deer work in supporting the Cape profiles. So we'll be doing that probably September, October. And probably Kimberly will talk to us about that. She is doing a presentation this Wednesday for our Secretariat members, and we can discuss items like that and how we can help Cape move forward. Okay, economic development business lands assessment. We know we have opportunities in the Southeast Industrial. Scott and the development team have been working on those. We know we have new inquiries on the land immediately north of the town office or in the northeast quadrant north of that. We actually had discussions early this morning on that. We have other items where we're under review for what empty spaces we have out there, whether they be in the uptown Olds area, and we're going to provide a report probably into the latter part of June to our executive and to our council members at large. So stay tuned. We've spent a lot of time and we've been monitoring pretty closely here, but we also know where we'd like to focus on getting storefronts refilled and support that kind of business. You've seen this before. We can't emphasize enough Indigenous recognition, tourism, art, heritage, and that. And once again, we'd remind folks that June 21st is our Indigenous celebration times and dates. And Michelle Jorgensen is working on those things. We've started to make changes in some of our relationships and partnerships. That's where we're carrying the last slide document here, number 16. And of course, Director Chant shot such a wonderful picture of the new sports fields that should soon be opening up that we had to incorporate the larger view where it wasn't cluttered with our community profile wording and all that. So thank you very much. Sorry for the level and amount of information.
Thank you. Thank you very much for that. Lots of excellent information. Do we have questions for Director White? Councillor Blatz, please.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Bennett. Through you to Mr. Wright, our economic business recovery support, there's a lot of great programs we have. And I did note that many of these programs are listed on our website underneath the COVID relief tab on our page for anybody who's listening or any businesses who might need to find that information out. But are we also sending all of this information and coordinating it through the Olds Chamber and letting it go out to their members as well? Larry, I apologize if you did cover it and I missed that, but I think that's kind of important as well.
Yeah, we tried to do a two-stage approach here. Working with Jen and Scott and our ICP COVID team, we try to refine it in-house, then get them to check it off, and through Kara and Mel and Monica, put that on the website under ICP. And then what I do through the Secretariat and all of our good members on the Secretariat, but also our not-for-profit groups, I send out separate emails.
Okay.
As we develop and redevelop information, and every Secretariat meeting, we carry this information and any new information. As a matter of fact, I'm a little worried about our Wednesday meeting because there's about 24 programs that haven't been refined to the point you see on our agenda. So we're going to have quite a long conversation with the Secretariat. Unfortunately, I'm a little worried because one of our long-term members from the chamber decided to take a chainsaw to his foot on Saturday. And we understand he may be having a slight bit of repairs done at Red Deer and that. So, but we make it a point with Cassidy and Mark and with Claire to make sure, and Everett to make sure that we get the best we can out of the information levels.
Perfect. Excellent job.
Okay.
I'm so glad to see the direction that our economic development and our tourism is going in, and it's really a positive move for the community. I'm very good. It's great to see. Thank you for all you and your committee are doing for us.
Sure.
Thank you very much.
Sure. Anything else?
Sorry, go ahead, Larry.
Is there anything else? We know time's of the essence, and you've got a lot of work in front of you on this agenda here.
Any further questions, Council? Seeing none, I would accept a motion, please.
Yep.
Mayor Musichka, please.
Thank you very much, Deputy Mayor. Yes, I move that we accept the Economic Development Secretariat's quarterly report as information.
Very good. Thank you. And I will, if there's no further discussion, I'll call for the vote. All those in favor? And that's carried and it's unanimous. Thank you very much. Next up, we have operations and capital projects. And who will introduce this?
Thank you, CAO. I will ask Director Chant to give us an update on the Operations Center and other capital projects. So with that, okay. Director Chant.
Thank you.
Thank you through the chair. I thought Justin was doing such a good job earlier on the meeting introducing everybody. I thought you're just going to keep on going, but
your turn.
My turn. So anyhow, so today's update, Greg sent us from is not able to meet us today. So Andrew Simpson is going to give us a brief update on the status of our operations center, and I'll give you further updates on other projects after he is done. So okay. Andrew, if you can take it away.
Perfect, thank you, Scott. So the project is currently just wrapping up. We're on track to have occupancy for the building granted this week, and to have the keys handed over to the town this week as well. The contractor was previously aiming for April 27th for the occupancy date. They did have some materials that were delayed by about a week, so that's pushed the occupancy date into this week. Everything has arrived now and been installed. The building itself is largely complete. There were some minor cosmetic deficiencies identified, so they're just cleaning up some minor issues with paint and ceiling tiles and things of that nature. Otherwise, they'll have a little bit of site work, some gravels and landscaping to complete over the next couple of weeks here. But otherwise, the project is complete. The building is ready to go. They're on budget. Yeah, and so the town should be able to start moving in here shortly.
Excellent news. Are there any questions for Andrew? Seeing no hands, you can proceed, Director Chant, please.
Okay, yeah, and I'd like to thank Andrew and his team for being a project manager on this project throughout the winter and up to this date. So it's been greatly appreciated to have that external project management looking out for us and moving this project through. So no offense to Andrew and his team, but I think this will be the last update they'll be giving council on this specific project. So again, Andrew and to Greg, please pass on our thanks for everything you've done. I know we've got a few little cleanup pieces, and we'll talk offline, but for council, I'd like to thank you for that and your presentations you've given over the month.
Yes, thank you.
Absolutely, thank you, Scott.
Okay, so further updates for council is we've talked about the 68th Street project. Contracts should just about be in the contractor's hands and just about ready to go with that. Hopefully in the next couple of weeks, they'll start to see some action in that aspect. 70th Avenue, tenders did close here last week, doing some evaluations and some making sure all the numbers line up and contractors and things like that. Just we'll have a further update to council on that to come with 70th Avenue. Councilor Overwater.
Thanks, Scott. On 70th Avenue, are you going to make sure that there's turning lights there? Because I think that is going to be a very, very busy intersection going forward. And I would think if we put the lights in now, because the lanes are there, that would be a better option than having to go back and get permission and stuff like that. So will there be turning lights at that 70th intersection?
Yes, Councillor of Water, there will be this intersection, if it proceeds, will be a full build out of an intersection that will be fully signalized, advanced green turns, exit lanes. It'll be basically to the utmost standard that a signalized intersection can be. I guess the best reference to that is the 67A intersection that goes into the Cornerstone development. It will sort of mirror that one as well, where it's that full intersection, turning lanes, concrete medians, all of that sort of stuff. So it's full build out as per everything to meet Alberta Transportation's needs as well. Okay. And if you've probably noticed, when you come into town, there's a set of flashing lights that warn you that the light is going to turn red. Yeah. They would have to be removed and then moved further out of town, just so that advanced warning is all in line, right? So fairly significant impact to that intersection, quite an upgrade. So we will be bringing that back forth, hopefully Monday, for some further discussion in council on this intersection, just to brief council on what this is all entailed and what's up with that intersection. The other project it's going to start up again, council did approve this project last fall based on winter and with some cost savings on that, was the reservoir relining. So the North Reservoir Relining was, we chose that, we selected the contractor, the price was set, and they were going to start this spring. So they've given us a heads up that they would like to start towards the end of May with that project. So what that'll entail is that hopefully in the next week, that we'll be able to start draining that reservoir. Not to be alarmed, we still have another reservoir that will supply the needs of town. So it's not that we're leaving town with no water. That's the only way we can do this, is that we have the second reservoir there. So they'll be in, and to be able to reline that reservoir and get that back operational as quick as possible. And I'll just finish with the North Reservoir before I take questions, if you don't mind, in that aspect. Then once we get it all relined and stuff, we can look at what treatments we can do on the outside. So I do see a couple of questions with that.
Councillor Harper, were you first?
Doesn't matter.
Thank you very much. Through you, Deputy Mayor, to Mr. Chand. In reference to the reservoir relining, and this is what I would term the North Reservoir, how many years extension of life would we be putting on this reservoir by doing the relining project, as compared to having to build a brand new one right away?
So the repair that's being done, or I guess the treatment that's being done, is that we basically giving a guarantee that it'll be good for a minimum of 10 years. That's the warranty period of the treatment that they're putting on there. So that's what we're looking at, is at least extending the life period, if need be, for at least 10 years before we can, that gives us time to look at where a new one would be placed and how we'd fund it.
Thank you.
Councillor Overwater.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Bennett. So Scott, I don't know how much water is in there that you're going to drain. Is there a way to capture that water so that it can be used elsewhere, or do we just let it run? Or what's the plan for that? Because there must be a lot of water in there, and I'd really hate to see it just flushed.
Yeah, thanks. The capacity in that reservoir, it's a 500,000 gallon reservoir. And when I say it's going to be drained, we will stop filling it, and we'll be using the water until we get down to a certain level, to where there's only a couple of feet in the bottom, and then disposing of just a very small amount. But no, we're not taking a full reservoir and pumping it down the drain. That's why they've given us basically a 2 to 3 week heads up. Okay. We work with the commission to not fill it, and we can drain it down. Yes, that would not be a wise choice of us to just pump it down the drain.
No, it wouldn't.
Any further questions on the matter? Seeing none, go ahead, Director Chant.
That was some of the major projects that we got going on right away. We did report on the wayfinding. Phase 2 of the project is Engineer Tech Ben McPhee is working on that right now, with a couple of little spots that he needs clarified on, and we're working through those pieces right now. So other than that, that's pretty much the major capital projects that we've got in the slot right now. Anyhow, more to come as spring and summer come along.
Perfect. Thank you very much. Councillor Blatz.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Bennett. Through you to Director Chant. I know that we're talking to capital projects, but as we've all had many, many conversations over our splash park, and the weather is changing and becoming much nicer and warmer, will we be able to open up as of a May? Isn't it the May long weekend we typically try? Are we ready to go, and does everything look operational, or have we been able to determine that yet? I was just asked the question the other day, so I indicated I would ask at this meeting. Sorry, I should have given you a heads up. Oh, I see.
Heads up. No,
Director Wagstaff has said he needs to comment.
No, and thank you. Well aware that this question may come up at any time as we move into May, and with the weather nice on Friday, but not so nice on Sunday. But yes, Peter is working through that, and all the bits and pieces. It shut down in good shape last year. So at this time, right now, Peter has not advised of anything that's majorly out of whack that would need to be addressed. There was some new fixtures that were purchased because of vandalism over the wintertime. He has those in hand. I'm not sure if they're out there just yet, but everything that we know of, he has within his grasp to do it fairly quickly. Even some of the items that we said like last fall, that, you know, some electrical gear and stuff like that, he has replacement parts here. They are here on site. So you know, if another fuse gets zapped, he can change it in a matter of 20 minutes, not a couple of days.
Well, please extend thanks, I believe, from all of us to Peter. He does an excellent job with the splash park. I know with facility maintenance, and it's great to see that. Yes. Yeah, so I'm glad to see that. And I think Director Chant probably wants to comment because it probably has to do with pool staff.
I'll leave it the other Director Chant, which would be
Director Wagstaff.
The other
Thank you. And like we have done with all of our facilities during the COVID, that we were preparing them to be able to be opened if we're allowed to do so. Unfortunately, at this point in time, spray parks, which classifies outdoor pools, splash parks, and such, are not allowed to be open. They're one of the restricted activities. So we will wait to see how things will unfold on that front. But as Scott has Director Chant has updated, you know, operationally they'll be ready. We'll just have to wait and see whether regulatory wise with COVID restrictions, if we'll be able to open it on the scheduled long weekend.
Thank you, Director Wagstaff. I had not seen that, so that's good information. Perhaps maybe we might have to do a did you know or something to alert people that until we get the clear go ahead from AHS that due to COVID restrictions, there may be a delay in opening it, and that's the only reason.
We've already readied that communication. We were waiting till an appropriate time just to see how things unfold and not be too premature with that announcement. But at this point in time, the regulations are clear that spray parks and outdoor pools are prohibited.
Okay, thank you for that. I did not see that. I appreciate that.
Thank you very much for that update. So any further questions? Councillor Ryan.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Bennett. I'm going to go all the way back to the Op Center and just ask Director Chant if you can tell us when the move-in will be then, if they're going to be able to take possession sometime this week. It'd be nice to know when our staff will be able to move into that building.
So yeah, so what we're looking at is you know, of course, we can't do a whole lot until we get the keys handed to our MIS. But this Thursday, our IT group is coming in to start setting up, making sure the IT ports are ready, that computers can start moving in. The 10th, May 10th, there's a company coming in to move desks. We have in storage and also from the existing building to move them in and start setting up those offices. So starting as of early as next week, we're going to start moving some of the staff into that building with desks and computers and things like that. The majority of the other equipment and things like that, they've already actually started moving some stuff out there that doesn't need to be, they're putting it out of the way. And they're also packaging up other stuff as we speak and putting it in pallets and wrapping it. So hopefully, you know, in the next week or two that we're going to start making that coordinated shift, and, you know, looking at towards the end of May, having, you know, majority of our staff actually working out of there and majority of our equipment out there. So just with summer staff starting this week, it's a little extra for those duties there. And then next week being spring cleanup week, starting May 10th, we'll have a lot of staff busy in the mornings, but as they get done, there's routes and stuff like that, they can start picking away that next week as well. So our staff are anxious to get out there as well. So we're looking as quick as we can start moving stuff across logically, we will.
Excellent, thank you.
Very good. Councillor Blatz.
Thank you. And just when you mentioned staff, are our summer staff been hired? Because isn't their start date to be today? Because I did
correct.
notice on Friday there was the ad still came out with summer employment opportunities, but when I looked on the webpage, I didn't see anything. So I was just curious if we have in fact hired our summer staff, and if they're, because I mean, wasn't today to be their start date, or did I misunderstand that?
No, you're absolutely correct. Councillor Blatz is for all of the majority of the summer staff started today. The one you do see there is was a fill-in for one of the parks people that's on a leave, and to still help offset that. So yeah, so majority, all of them started today. They'll be hitting the ground running tomorrow because they have to do. First day is always the orientation, paperwork, and getting used to where the space is. There's quite a few. I don't know if Mr. Fox could probably tell us how many were returning from last year. I want to say 7 or 8 were returnees, and then about 7, I believe, brand new, or I might have it the other way around.
There were 7 returnees from last year.
7.
Okay.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Anything further? Seeing nothing, I would seek a motion, please. Councillor Thompson.
Yes, Deputy Worship. I would move that we accept the Operations Capital Project verbal report as information.
Thank you. If no further discussion, I'll call for the vote. All those in favor? And that's carried and unanimous. Thank you very much. I've been asked to set a 10-minute break, and so we will see you back at 3:08. Thank you. Good. All right. Thank you. And we're back, and we get a winter report up next. And who will be introducing this?
Thank you, Deputy, and I'll give a brief introduction to the winter report. Mr. Chant had talked about spring and summer in his last presentation. Now he gets to go back into the future and talk about winter and the road maintenance report. So with that, Mr. Chant, tell us all about last year.
All right, thank you. Do you want to share the presentation, Sean? It's way better for Sean to run that than me. So anyhow, so yeah, we're bringing you all the way back in time to winter of 2021. So we can go to the next slide there, Sean. So just a bit of a breakdown on, the contracted hours that we used, the amount of hours put in by those contractors. And one thing to note with all of these hours that you see and all of these dollars figures that you see, this is not including any of our own equipment. This is purely contracted hours. So when we look at the bottom line there, when you go to the 2020 budget and the 2021 year to date, those are hours, dollars spent on contractors. Go to the next slide, Sean. So again, the next one is basically of materials that were purchased. So we have all of our winter salt and sand that gets put up each year in those pieces. Next slide. So this is where we get into some of our stuff. So we have our own equipment for a lot of the stuff, the day-to-day stuff that we can do until we get into the full removal. So as you can see, the list of equipment that we use, the roadmap that we have there outlining reds, greens, yellows, purples, all of that sort of good stuff for the town and the priorities there. This one here shows, so last winter between, for 2020, 762 hours of overtime put in by our staff over and above the contractors. So, it seems like a lot of hours, but really, I guess to some might think that less than $23,000 is might sound like a large number, but relatively speaking, for the amount of hours that staff put in, that's pretty reasonable amount of money too as well. So the next slide, please, Sean. So just a bit of a breakdown on average, what it takes to do each of the priorities. So in this aspect, so you can get sort of a bit of appreciation of not everything can be all hit in the same day. So, when we get these snowstorms that do come in and, even 3 or 4 days into it, when we get those emails coming in and stuff saying like, well, you haven't got to my road yet. It does take time to get through minimum 5 days just to get all the priority routes done into that aspect. That's not taking into the residential. So
may I interrupt for a moment, Director Chant?
Yes.
I just thought that information would be something very good to put on our websites or social media of some sort so that the public is aware of how long it actually does take to complete all of the routes. Just a thought.
Yeah, I'll work with Director Wagstaff and his team to see how we can put this on the website into either Did You Know or something like that as under a Public Works piece as well. So the other piece, yes, good point. So just also in this retrospect, we want to make sure to let you know that Public Works also has other duties that need to be done as well. So not only when a snowstorm hits, there's things like full burials and cremains, which they do take priority on making sure that those services happen when able to. So just so you know that Public Works, they did 6 full burials and 4 cremains during the same winter period. This isn't for the entire year. This is just for that winter period, just so you know what other pressures they have. Along with our utility staff that, if they're not doing water breaks and things like that, they're able to help out running a piece of equipment or a sand truck and things like that. But just in that aspect too, right? Is they did 3 water main breaks, 7 service line repairs, and 3 school line services in that same time frame as well. So we're trying to match our staff with what needs to be done, along with making sure the roads are clear as well. So next slide, please, Sean. So that was only one part of the snow removal. So the other part of snow removal that we do is parks folks. They look after all the trails, and then looking at all of our other facilities that we own as well. So here just shows you that what they do in a day and a couple of days after a snowstorm event, that they're responsible for doing over 18 kilometers of trails. And also in the same token is that they're trying to make sure that the following locations of town-owned facilities are also done, like I said, it says hand shoveling done before 8 a.m. So they're trying to make sure that when we get to work, that the sidewalks are clear for us to come into the building, as well as getting everything else done. As I said, and down below, day two, sorry, is they go out and start widening out the trail. So day one is just to get a single pass down, get people moving on them, and then day two and subsequent days after that to widen it out if they need be. Along with, we get other pieces of shoveling around benches and cleaning off the sculptures and stuff like that. We didn't put that in this presentation, but those are all bits and pieces that are over and above on what they're doing in these first 2 days. So next slide. So again, it just a bit of a timeline and what equipment is used for doing snow plowing that our parks do as well. So next slide. So yeah, the operations snow dump. So currently we're utilizing approximately 11 acres on the northwest corner of town. This year, same as last year, we did limit the hours that people could use the snow dump site. So basically, it was open from 7 a.m. to 3:30 p.m. during the working hours that we were there. But also to note on that one is that not only just dumping the snow out there, but we have to make sure we have room for subsequent snowstorms and utilizing more area, because we don't pile it up high like you might see in other communities and things like that. So here you see an extra cost for grading of the snow dump. We had to hire a loader to go out there and try and open areas up and aspects like that. We did talk about this with council during service level of looking at a longer term solution to this ever ongoing issue that we have, that I think winters are with us for being with us for quite a long time before, and probably for quite a long time in the future that winter will be with us. So just on how to deal with it on an ongoing basis permanently instead of utilizing somebody else's land. Really, that's a quick brief overview of our winter report. And if council has any questions or wouldn't like to see winter again until November, that would be great.
Very good. Thank you very much. Are there questions? Councillor Blatz and then Councillor Ryan.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Bennett. Through you to Director Chant, of course. Yes, I also did think that the employee tasks page we should definitely do something on social media or definitely on our webpage or something, so people are aware of the time it takes for you people to complete these tasks. But I just want to say I just recently, as of Saturday, in fact, received a compliment on the snow removal this past winter from a citizen who was very impressed with the overall job that the town had done with the trails and with the street snow removal, particularly in the residential areas. And she did comment to me, she realized it takes some time, but she was very impressed. And I think that you need to be aware of that and pass it on. I asked her to send it to me in an email so I could forward it to you. I haven't seen it yet, but I do want to extend that compliment to you and your staff.
I appreciate that, Councillor Batts.
Councillor Ryan.
Thank you very much, Deputy Mayor Bennett. Through to Director Chant. Yeah, I did receive a couple of comments over the winter with regards to the snow clearing on the residential streets, and how there was quite a few people that are surprised we even do any clearing on the residential streets. I lived in Calgary for many, many years. I never saw a snowplow on my street once in all that time. So to have them go out at least twice this year was really great. I do have a question, and that is with regards to budget. So I know that this council, we increased the budget and we've gotten up to 140,000, but obviously that's you know, when you take a look at the 186 and then you've got 22 for overtime, obviously, is it your feeling that we need to look at higher numbers, or does this just come out of a reserve funding to cover that?
Thank you, through the chair. So we have, many years ago, council did set up a separate reserve for snow removal budget.
Yeah.
I believe at budget time, we said there was 100 and something thousand in there. I'd have to get that from Ms. Lindeman. But that was the premise of that was, you know, if we budget, you know, we've got it up to 140. We did present to council in the last budget that it should be up to 160 at least, based on a 5-year average. But with that reserve, you know, you bring money out of there. And if we do get years where we don't spend that all that amount of money, that would get put back in there. So this was one line item in our public works budget that had in the previous sort of being standalone on itself, is that one line item. If it was under budget, that money would go into that reserve. Vice versa, if we needed more money, we'd pull it out of that reserve. In that aspect, you know, we were sitting really good until what was it, December 20th or 22nd, when we had that big snowstorm. If we didn't have that snowstorm at December 22nd, we would have been probably under budget or right on the target. But that did, you know, that's where we've seen a majority of our money go to. Overtime is, we don't budget for overtime in that aspect. And as Ms. Lindeman's probably, you know, over the years of our vacancy rate, we've really sort of been, you know, living on that premise of that if we have a vacant position, that has been able to, you know, absorb those overtime costs. So, you know, again, you know, if you wanted to do it to be, you know, have it in a budget line item, you put in an extra, you know, $20,000 for overtime. We may use it, we may not. So yeah, it's that one's probably a tough one to really nail down unless we're consistently at that every winter.
Well, just supplemental to that, if that is okay, Deputy Mayor.
One.
So perhaps it might be good when we do go back to budgeting this year for the following year, if we could see maybe a trend to see what's happening with regards to that. I know that we can't say, okay, we're going to have a snow, so let's, you know, at this time we're going to have a snow at this time, because we obviously can't predict snowfall. But yeah, there might be a trend that has occurred over the last 10 years that it's going up and up and up. Because from my time on council here, it seems to be that we're always under budgeting that, and it might be something that we should just take a look and see if there is a trend, and maybe do a little bit better on the budgeting from a council point of view. I don't know how the other councillors feel about that, but I know that we try to make sure that we have a certain amount of money in the budget, and it's always a hard line to walk between what, you know, how much we put in and how much we need for other things. So I don't know if that's possible or not, but maybe it's something to think about.
Yeah, I'll let Mr. Merritt speak first, and yeah, we'll go from there.
Unless Director Linderman has the numbers up, we did do an analysis a couple of years ago to see what the trend was, and it was going up. And I think that's where Mr. Chant was talking about. 160,000 on average is the cost. But because we do have a healthy reserve, we did not increase it, I believe, this past couple of years. So we left it at 140.
Thank you. Councillor Thompson. Oh, I'm sorry, Director Chant, did you want to add?
I'll just add one more little piece to that, is that also in the 2021 budget, we budgeted 120,000 coming out of taxes and pulling 20,000 out of reserves, if I'm correct. So, you know, we didn't fully budget the 140 this year. We only budgeted, council approved 120 with 20 coming out of reserves as well. So for a budget of 140, but we've already, you know, talked about dipping out of the reserves already for 2021.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Yeah, I'll just ask Director Linderman if she has any information on the topic of Councillor Ryan's question.
Yes, for sure. So Our reserve, so what, as Director Chant said, we did take from it in 2020. We took 47,000 to cover that. There is still 51,000 in that snow removal reserve. In previous years, so if I just go back to 2019, we only spent 118,000. So in those years, we would have transferred to the reserve. So it does go back and forth.
Thank you. Councillor Thompson.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Bennett. Through you to Mr. Chant, I believe we also had some conversation around the granular material that we were using on roads and whether we had enough budget in that space. How did we do relative to the granular material that helps people stop?
So I believe this year, thinking off the top of my head, we did increase that budget to actuals. We've been, budgeting 40,000 a year, I believe it was, and consistently coming in the mid 50s to 60s. And this year, council did bump that up to $60,000. So we should be closer in line of what we're actually spending for materials in that aspect.
Thank you very much. Anything further from anyone? Councillor Overwater.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Bennett. Yeah, and just for the public's information, I just want to reiterate that, we did have some concerns from our residents about whether we should be using sand or salt or when we should be using the sand or salt. And I know there is a formula that we use for if it's a certain, how many degrees below or whatever, 0, there's a formula that we use. So Mr. Champ, maybe you would like to just touch a little bit on that, because, we did get some phone calls on that, and we did get some, news items on that. So maybe you want to touch on that just so that the public realizes that, we don't just throw sand and salt out for no reason. There is a formula that is used when we use those products.
Right. Thank you, Councilor Overwater. Yeah, and probably one thing we do, sort of want to reiterate on this year is that, we're out there, doing the sanding and salting and doing the snow removal. This year, we're upping our game, so to speak, but the amount of concerns and complaints and phone calls, they dropped drastically to what we were getting at, in the office here, or even to the shop, to virtually very little. But we did work with staff as well as changed our mixture up a little bit, that we just weren't putting out one, we blend our salt and sand together at roughly a 10% mixture of 10% salt in amongst the sand and granula. When the temperatures were closer to 0 and that -5 and they were icing up, the traffic ices up the roads quite a bit, we were actually using a little bit more salt versus sand because it melted off quicker and still get that bare pavement. Once you get down to that -15 range, salt doesn't become, it's not as effective. So we go back to our regular mixture, that 10% mixture is, we want more grit on the road for -15 and below, because the grit's what's going to give you the traction to stop. Right. If we get a little bit of warming, then the salt will help make that, go into the ice and stuff. Really, intersections, if you notice, intersections are really, really bad for icing up and things like that. And that's when vehicles are slowing down, they pack in that piece. But if you ever noticed, when vehicles with the new emissions and controls that these vehicles have today, is if you ever notice when a vehicle takes off, there's always a little bit of water that comes out of the exhaust, right? Mm-hmm. And that's what that is. That is water. So at every intersection, when that vehicle stops, they take off, there's a little bit of water that comes out of that exhaust, and we know what water does in the middle of wintertime. And that's why you'll notice intersections will be a lot icier than the major parts of the road. So we mix and match a little bit of what we do with our concentration this year, and that's what we really tried to focus on. So
sure. Yeah. Thanks.
Very good. I have one question for Director Chant. What happens with the detritus when the snow's melted and you're doing spring cleanup?
All the material left over? Yeah,
where does it go?
So basically, we sweep up a lot of the material. So there's a, you know, when we do snow removal, there's a certain amount that gets picked up in the snow, and it ends up out of the snow dump that we have to clean up. But right now, basically when we pull the material off, that's what the street sweeper's main function is first thing in the spring, is to suck up as much of that material as it can before we get the rains and it all ends up in our storm drains. We have to get rid of. But we stockpile it. Basically, if we're able to use it for, you know, different areas for fill, we will. It's pretty contaminated, so, you know, there's always been this thought of, you know, how much would it cost to try and recapture and recycle that. I know the city of St. Albert is trying, but, you know, I guess it goes back to the same piece of, ends up costing you more to recycle it than it does to purchase. But I know that's not the right answer, but it's but that's what it boils down to at times is we'll haul this out. We've hauled it out to gravel pits for them to use as backfill and things like that. So,
okay, thank you for that. Any further questions? Seeing none, I would accept a motion, please. Councillor Harper.
Thank you very much, Deputy Mayor Bennett. I so move that we accept the Winter Road information report for information.
Thank you very much. Anything further? No, seeing none, I'll call for the vote. All in favor? And that's unanimous. Thank you very much. Next up, Heritage Arts and Culture Annual Report. Who will introduce?
I will hand this to Director Wagstaff to introduce the presenter and the topic.
Thank you. Director Wagstaff, go ahead.
So we have our annual report today from Heritage Arts and Culture. Our Heritage Advisor, Michelle Jorgensen, is going to have a short presentation that will complement the report that was provided to Council in the package. Michelle, please.
Thank you, Mr. Wagstaff. Good afternoon, Your Worship, Deputy Mayor Bennett, Mayor Muzychka, council members. Thank you for your time today. I'm going to attempt to share my screen here. We'll see how that goes. Haha, it may have worked. Eureka, thank you. This is the presentation that was included in your council package. Initially, when I started with the town, my responsibilities were solely implementation and management of the Town of Olds Heritage Management Plan that was approved by council in 2010. Since commencing with the town in 2013, my role has expanded to include community facilitation in arts, culture, and heritage. The budget for Heritage Arts and Culture is wholly funded through the revenues collected from ATCO gas franchise fees. And heritage management in Olds focuses on the celebration through supporting best practices of conservation in built and cultural heritage management. Our commitment to heritage connects with the development of arts and culture within the community. And I can't share this research stat enough. According to that Hill Strategies research in 2018, virtually all Canadians 15 years or older participate in some type of arts, culture, and heritage activity. So I really appreciate that Larry Wright pointed that out in his report on economic development and tourism. As well, the report that came out of Hill Strategies in 2010 acknowledged that Olds, Alberta was the second highest concentration of a municipality in all of the prairie provinces. That report was showing artists in small and rural municipalities in Canada And it showed that as many artists live in Canada's small and rural municipalities as in Toronto and Montreal combined. So in the prairie provinces, as I mentioned, Olds came in second. We were ahead of Canmore for that. So our concentration was noted at 1.4% of the local labor force. So that is really exciting. And that report is available on the Hill Strategies website. So because of the amenities, location, and creative community found in Oldson area, we continue to have opportunities like the Art Waves West creative conference that comes to Olds. Since 2016, this annual conference is creative arts that takes place across a weekend. People stay at the Pomeroy, and it has brought in hundreds of people from across North America. In better times, when we could travel, people came from the States up to our fair community to participate in arts over that weekend. This year, the conference is booked to go ahead and is scheduled for September the 16th to 19th. For more information on how to participate in that conference, register, and for updates on how that pans out as we move forward in time with the COVID situation, I would direct you to their website at c2cevents.com. For heritage management, there we go. Conservation of our municipal historic resources is ongoing. Throughout the last year, I've had conversations around purchase of the Bank of Montreal, talking to potential purchasers. The local realtors are very good at connecting with the town to see what this actually means to be a designated municipal historic resource. And I'm thrilled to be able to touch base with folks that might be interested in taking up that responsibility. As you know, the Bank of Montreal building did sell by auction eventually in October of 2020. The Brown residence, the Dr. Hartman residence, and Armstrong Bakery are other municipal historic resources that have had different projects ongoing or different concerns that I've been able to support with. As you know, the Different Strokes Gallery unfortunately left us. They were housed in the Armstrong Bakery on Main Street in Uptown Olds. I spoke with the owner of that property, and now there is a tenant going in there. So that's very exciting. And I've now spoken with that potential tenant about what revisions can be done to a designated building as far as color schemes, signage, approach to historic painting. The pictures in the slide here are of Urban Roots, and they conducted some conservation to their historic siding. They repainted, and I worked with them and connected them with the conservation advisor on how best to approach that. Heritage awareness is the other big part of our heritage management plan. Back in July last year, I was approached by an individual by the name of Craig Baird. He lives and works in Alberta, and he creates podcasts about local and regional heritage that he shares on a few different platforms, including his own Canadian History X, it's called. This did go live as of the end of April, and the link is available on our Town of Olds website. It's about a 20-minute podcast that focuses on our local history, everything from the Battle of Olds to local aviation history, and some twists and turns that maybe we had no idea about or had forgotten, but it's great. And it was an opportunity to work with the archives and the folks at the museum to make sure that what was being shared was accurate and to help Mr. Baird out with that. I've included a picture here of the resource that was created from a project with Mary Hayes and the Mountain View Museum and Archives back in 2019. She produced a heritage walking tour of the cemetery. And there was a fantastic event that took place in the museum to perform the stories from our legacy, our story. The resource from that is this old cemetery guidebook, which is available as a PDF on our website. There were about 500 of the books printed, and they continue to be a resource to folks in the community, and especially Elder Burgum, the Métis Nation of Alberta Region 3. She's a local resident, and she can't say enough about what a tremendous resource this is for Métis community in this area for researching family history and other cultural history. So I was really thrilled that this could carry on and be such a tremendous resource from that project. For arts, we have also been busy. Our Memorial Way banners got revision to the logos as well. The one banner for the community peace officers was revised with a better photograph that was more appropriate for them. Ongoing maintenance of these banners is taking place. We've had some concerns about missing banners, and we're addressing it, looking at different materials and working closely with operations and parks on how to maintain this exhibit, because that's what it is. Cornerstone Art Commons, in October last year, I noticed that there was some weathering taking place to the original paintings in that exhibit, and made arrangements with the Olds College in their Indigenous students meeting area to house the original paintings indoors. They are huge 4-foot by 8-foot panels, and there's 2 of them. So finding a location that would be indoors and still widely public accessible was an opportunity, and that was a great partnership that we could coordinate with them. We entered into a loan agreement for the loan of the pieces to the library area where the Indigenous Students Meeting Center is. So it's a significant display for them. It's the Métis painting and the Fancy Dancer painting. And because we had such fantastic photographs taken of the originals before they were sealed by Veronica Reist, we could create reproductions of them on chloroplast. So they went right out into the display at Cornerstone, and unless you go up close to them, you can't tell that it's not the original there. So that's fantastic. Excuse me. Olds Rocks, the Highway 27 sculpture pathway. Oh dear, sorry. We celebrated again International Sculpture Day on April the 24th, 2021. Excuse me. And because of the challenges with COVID still ongoing in the world, an actual in-person event is just not possible. So promotion of live and virtual self-guided tours was part of our promotion for International Sculpture Day. We've launched our I Love Olds photo contest again. Details of that are on the website. And September has become, I guess, Arts-tember in Olds. And this has been a wonderful opportunity for community engagement in a virtual realm. I've worked with Nikki Carmichael in the office in programming to send out weekly invitations for activities centered on different aspects of public art in our community. Word searches, different things like that. So that was one way to get around our challenging times that we're in with COVID. The culture, so thrilled that Council proclaimed Black History Month in February this year. International Women's Day was on March the 8th. And I've been working closely with the Olds and District Hospice Society for their initiatives, including Palliative Care Week. There was proclamation for that. Ongoing work on National Indigenous Peoples Day with the Planning Committee, again with the challenges around safety protocols and gathering. The group has decided that it will be a virtual event. It was really kind of up to the last minute. Could we have an event? Would it need to be a virtual event? But yes, it will be virtual, and it will launch on June the 21st, and there'll be more information coming out about that. Mountain View Moccasin House Society is ongoing with different initiatives that they're bringing to the community, including Orange Shirt Day, which we did recognize last September and look forward to recognizing again this September. With the Welcoming and Inclusive Communities Initiative, you will recall I presented to Council back in September, and just an introduction on what all that is and how we might want to formalize the initiative, just bringing information around what we are already doing in the community for welcoming and inclusive communities. I'm now participating as the town representative on the Olds College Diversity and Inclusion Committee, which started in April this year. And I'm so impressed and inspired by the work that the group over there is doing. So they're going to be a tremendous support and inspiration for the rest of the community on that. Trends and challenges. Well, this COVID-19 certainly has been challenging with restrictions, as I mentioned, on the gatherings and related safety protocols. Event programming and planning has really needed to be creative. And, you know, it has offered us opportunities for working in a virtual realm that, while challenging, I think offers broader access to what we have to offer here in Olds. Now we have events and opportunities that people from well beyond the borders of Olds can participate in. So that's really awesome. And especially when we're considering economic development and tourism draws. With the COVID-19, I've been working also with community services and emergency social services, conducting regular check-ins throughout the community with churches, grocery stores, etc., to offer support as required. I have been the acting liaison officer with our incident command post, pretty much ongoing since the beginning, and have been engaged in regular communications with community partners, including seniors residences, the PDD community, AHS, EMS, and mental health, the Olds Hospital and Care Center, the RCMP, the large employers in the community, and others, to ensure that everyone's staying informed about the current situation. And if there are opportunities to support and or collaborate, we identify those as early as possible. An example was with accredited supports to the community. They were finding it a challenge with safety protocols around outbreaks. The amount of garbage that is generated to ensure that they are following proper safety protocols meant that their current black bin setup wasn't keeping up to the challenges. So just because we were able to communicate with them, they you know, asked the question, is there some support we can get on this? And it was a small thing that the town could do to you know, ensure that they could have a black bin on a temporary basis for the duration of any outbreak. They wouldn't have to pay for the bin fee, just the monthly rental for however long they needed it, and then it could go away. So pretty simple, and all, you know, because we were communicating. So that's pretty exciting. our public art and engagement through heritage programming. Again, I had some really big plans about engaging with the community in person, and I'm just really looking forward to how we can do that as we go forward. In particular, that pearl of wisdom, darn it, I want to get that out into the community, to the schools, seniors residences, different places where we can in person hopefully gather and bring people together through arts and culture. But I suppose in the meantime, virtual programming is a lot better than the nothing we'd otherwise get to do. So another opportunity we see is with the Welcoming and Inclusive Communities Initiative. I've been continuing to support community efforts in developing creative and welcoming and inclusive community, including but not limited to the age-friendly, accessibility, the numerous cultural groups in our community, and opportunities for continuing to build those relationships continue. The Truth and Reconciliation calls to action remain ongoing as opportunities for professional development on the history and current experiences of Indigenous peoples in Canada and locally, and integrating welcoming and inclusive community awareness throughout our organization and connecting with initiatives ongoing and driven by the community is a tremendous opportunity to address truth and reconciliation, as well as other aspects of diversity and inclusion. So I do look forward to talking with you all more about welcoming and inclusive communities at an upcoming council meeting. So that'll be really, really awesome. With that, that's my report for Heritage Arts and Culture in our fair town. I thank you for your time and invite any questions you might have.
Thank you, Ms. Jorgensen. That was wonderful information. So we will take questions. Any questions right now? No? Well, look at that. You just explained it very well and we didn't have to ask questions. So I will seek a motion, please. Who was up first? I'm sorry, I glanced away. Sorry. Oh, Councillor Thompson was first. Go ahead, please.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Bennett. I would move to accept the Heritage Arts and Culture Annual Report as information. And thank Ms. Jorgensen for presenting.
Thank you very much. Nothing further, then I would seek the vote. All in favor? And that's carried unanimously. Thank you very much. And thank you, Ms. Jorgensen.
Thanks so much.
Next up, business arising from the minutes or any unfinished business. Anyone have something for this? Seeing none, we can move right along. Next up is bylaws, and 6A is the Public Art Advisory Committee bylaw. And who will speak to this? CAO Mayor, go ahead.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. As you know, we've been moving towards having bylaws for all our council committees. And this is one of the last ones that is still from a policy that's operated under terms of reference. So we're bringing this forth to basically put it into bylaw. It's taken a lot of the information that we have in previous materials, as I said, the terms of reference and the policy, and bringing it to the formal bylaw process. And with that, I'll ask Director Wagstaff to speak to this.
Thank you. Go ahead, Director Wagstaff.
As was provided in the agenda package, just a brief background that initially this committee was struck as a committee under the authority of the Chief Administrative Officer. Early on, as we rolled this out, Council recognized that this was something they wished to have as a council committee. So we continued on with the terms of reference, and as we made the transition through 2020 to make the changes necessary to have this become an appointed committee from council directly. That happened in the October organizational committee meeting where you reappointed a majority of those that had been appointed under the administrative committee, and you appointed the 2020 and onward the committee. Following that, the next step is to transfer the terms of reference into a bylaw. And we have captured that in this bylaw. It was a bylaw that was formed very much like that of the Family and Community Social Services bylaw. That's what it was drafted after. And what was provided for you was also the background that you had the terms of reference. I do recognize, though, that there were some comments. So when it was transferred from a Word document to a PDF, it missed that. So if you're wondering in the package why there were some strikeouts, there were also some comments to it that just noted what things transferred over into the bylaw and what things were removed. But the one that was removed was struck in the text. All of the others are in some different order, but the other segments of the terms of reference are included in the bylaw. And if there are any questions, I'd be willing to take those forward, or if there are any comments about the bylaw itself.
Thank you, Director Wagstaff. Councillor Harper, go ahead.
Thank you very much. And just in reference to the bylaw on page 90 of our agenda, 4.0 term, 4.1, you say, notwithstanding section 5.4, but if you go to 5, there is no 5.4. So are we missing a line somewhere?
I will check into that before we bring it forward next. I'll just have to read through. Thank you for that.
Yeah, I just happened to notice it just now. And just one other comment. I really appreciate the fact that we did listen to the Public Art Committee in the knowledge that from time to time, we do have to, this committee will have to seek help or assistance from other sources. And so that's provided under 9.1. So that's great.
Great, thank you. Good catch. Anything further? Councillor Ryan.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Bennett. I just have a question on the terms as well, and good catch, Councillor Harper, because I noticed that as well. I was wondering about staggering terms. Like I had just finished having a library board meeting last month, and we had talked about perhaps raising this at council as well, and having terms staggered so that we have some members at 1 and some members at 2. And I thought that that was the case for this one. And but I don't see where we do have it itemized, and I'm just wondering if that needs to be put into this bylaw or whether or not we're going to include it.
Director Wagstaff?
On 2 items, the 4.1 that Councillor Harper pointed out, that is to be section 4.4, which notwithstanding when a vacancy occurs, that was the connection there. Okay. Related to that would be Councillor Ryan's comment. It was appointed at your organizational meeting that it staggered the terms. So half of the committee was a 1 year, so that it would come up in a year, and half the committee was a 2-year one, so that at the start those would be staggered appointments. I will ask the legislative clerk if she had any comment on whether that should be included in the bylaw or we remain that as a choice of council at the organizational meeting.
Legislative clerk?
Can you hear me?
No.
Yep.
Can you hear me at all?
Very
no.
Faintly,
yes.
Marcy, very faintly.
Okay. No, it should not be in the bylaw, as it is already in the public appointments for policy that they will be staggered.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you for the clarification, Ms. McKenna.
Okay. Any further questions? No? Seeing none, I would. Your arm. Sorry, go ahead.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. I just wanted to ask another question since nobody else is doing this, but yeah, right under the section 5.1, where we talk about 3 to 5 public members at large, I actually would like to hear from the two members of council that are on this committee to see whether or not that should just be saying 5. Whether or not you think you could operate smoothly with just 3 public members at large, or whether we should just have it as 5.
Well, I don't know.
Councillor Overwater.
Well, it seemed like we did appoint 5, and then it seems like some don't show up too often, so we end up being with 3. I think 5 is good. I think 5 public at large and 2 council are good, and then we have our Michelle Jorgensen is our liaison person. Mm-hmm. So I think that works out good. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you, Councillor Butts. Then Harper.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Bennett. I think from a perception, from public perception, I think it's better that we have at least 5 members for public at large. I don't think that we need to have that perception that this is going to be dominated by council or town administration. So I would prefer to leave it as at least 5, if not more. Yeah. But good point, Councillor Ryan. I mean, it's good to ask the question.
Councillor Ryan. Further?
Yeah, Councillor Harper was next.
Oh, I'm sorry, Councillor Harper. Hi, Air.
So what I was going to suggest is that under 5.1A membership, we just delete the word 3 and have it 5 public members as appointed by council. Because as Councillor Overwater pointed out, we appoint 5 and quite often only 3.
Often don't show, yeah. CAO Merritt, you're up. You're on mute.
Yes.
Oh, there you go.
In 5.1, we do say a minimum of 5, maximum of 7. And I think the rationale for that was that it may be difficult to attract people at one time, but we would not establish a committee that didn't have at least 5 members to it. And by having, maybe it's incorrect, but by having it's stated just as 7, would that be limiting if we did not fill the other 2 positions due to a vacancy or something of that nature?
Okay, thank you.
As the CEO commented, that I believe was the intent of having the range, so that you could have a committee with 3 to a maximum of 5, as compared to saying 5 and then not being able to strike the committee because it's short of appointments.
Okay. Mayor Misichka was answered.
Yeah. Yeah.
Councillor Harper.
In hearing that explanation, I'm more than happy to leave that 3 to 5 public members. So upon hearing that explanation, I think that's good.
Okay. I'm curious, who chairs the meeting or the committee?
A public member.
A public member, okay. Just curious.
The council does not chair.
Yeah, that's good. That's good to hear.
Yeah.
Anything further? Councillor Ryan.
Well, thank you. Yeah, the reason why I brought this up was because of the number game. So you end up, if you have people if you have only 5 members on the committee and you end up having some who cannot show up, then you have, you struggle to have a good conversation, and then you might have more councillors there than we have public at large. I would actually prefer to even see this go from a minimum of 7 up to a maximum of 9, just to try to get it so that you have good conversation, you have a good broader representation. And my concern is people who can't show up to a meeting. I'm on a committee right now where sometimes we only have 3 people show up to a meeting, and that doesn't have good conversation.
Quorum, yeah. Councillor Overwater, then Harper.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Bennett. I like the numbers the way they are. It's hard enough. I mean, we want 12 people on there, but we're still probably only maybe going to get 5. At the end of the day, if we are short, well, we've never really been short, but we've always made the conscious effort to talk to the people that are not there before making a decision. on some of the decisions that we've had to make in order to bring them forward to council. So it's not that we would ever just have 3 people making a decision. We would contact those other people that are on there, because public art is such a controversial topic anyway. So we want to make sure that we get it right, and we want to make sure we get everybody's opinion. So we would not, just take like 2 councillors and a public at large opinion. We would make sure that we had the other people's opinion.
Thank you. Councillor Harper.
I will use as an example the public artwork at the Art Commons, the Indigenous artwork. So we, as a committee, Public Art Advisory Committee, felt that we didn't have the expertise. So we actually brought in additional people to provide some more expertise. And so we had, even though they weren't part of that committee, they helped us with the expertise. And so that's where this ad hoc committee part under number 9.1 comes in. And so when it comes to certain situations, we can actually bring more people in for those conversations.
That's good news too. Anything further? No, seeing none, I would accept a motion. Councillor Harper.
So I move that we accept for information the bylaw 2021-11 to establish an advisory body on public art and direct administration to bring it back to a council meeting.
Thank you very much. Any further discussion? Seeing none, I'll call for the vote. All those in favor? And that's carried unanimously. Thank you very much. Up next is new business. Anyone with adding on to this? No, seeing none, we'll move right along and look at where we are. Number 8, we're at adjournment. I will seek a motion for this, please. Councillor Ryan, you're up.
I move we adjourn. Thank you.
Thank you very much. All in favor? And that's unanimous as well. Thank you very much. And thank you to our listening audience, and I guess eventually our video watching audience as well. And thank you to staff for their excellent reports. Appreciate it very much. Okay.
Thanks, everyone.